This video will be building on previous videos that were surrounding setting up model space and creating a plot area. And it's also going to be based on creating this template using pen weights based on color, not on layer. So if you're on a layer, that's going to be a slightly different template that you're going to set up. The reason we set up a template is because it contains all the information that we're generally going to use when we start a new drawing. So in order to do a new drawing, of course, first you've got to set up your basic model space. The only change that I would make from the original video is this time I would probably make the actual space that the model space is going to take up bigger, possibly 144 feet by 96 feet. That'll give you a little more room to play with. Other than that, the units is still architectural. Definitely you still want to go into your tools and work on your background, etc. But everything else should be the same. For the plotting, we're still going to allow for the pen weights that we set up earlier for the large and small. But now we're going to start adding some more items that are going to be very useful when you create your drawings. So the first thing that we're going to do today is we're going to add to what we've already discussed more layers. And layers is found in our format layers area. And here you can see we just have the 0 and def points. Those are pretty basic across the board, but we want to add some more layers. And please understand, this is your reference to the layers. You get to decide how they look, but there are some basic ones that are going to be helpful in your architectural work. So these are in no particular order, but I just happen to have an order that I've used, and that's what I'm going to go to today. So I'm going to click first on the new layer icon, bringing up a new layer, and I'm going to name my first layer appliances. And remember, I'm basing this on the pen weights that we set up in a previous video. So I'm going to make this particular layer my cyan layer. You could do it in several different ways, but that one is really a good one for me. So then just click OK. I'm going to go ahead and set up another layer. This one, I think I'll go ahead with cabinets. Cabinets, especially useful when we're dealing with kitchen cabinetry, sometimes built-ins for bars, etc. For that one, I'm going to go with a slightly heavier layer, and for me, that's going to be the blue. I see I have an extra layer here, so I'm just going to go ahead and I'll just rename this one. My next layer, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add columns. Now, please understand, not all of these are listed in what we do for the class itself, but very needed down the road if you decide to do a lot more with your CAD work. For your columns, actually, I would go ahead and leave those on a white. Usually they're a heavy item, so that one works really good. Let's do another layer, and let's go ahead and name this one just, how about dimensioning for the time being. Now, the nice part is that when you're dimensioning, you could do a couple of different kinds of dimensioning, and I'm going to go ahead and add two. So my first one, I'm going to do dimensioning and elevations. And for me then, for dimensioning, I always want my thinnest line. So in my pen weight world, that's going to be a red. Then I'm going to go ahead and add one more dimensioning layer. And this one, I'll put it as my floor plan layer. So I'm just going to write it as FP, still red. Do another layer. Let's go ahead this time and we'll add doors. We do a lot with doors in architectural, so it's nice to have a specific layer for that. And let's see, let's go ahead and add one for, how about electrical? And for electrical, I definitely like to have something, again, that's kind of more in the middle road. So I'll go ahead and name this one a magenta. I'm going to go ahead and add another layer. Let's do this one. You use this one in one of my previous classes, but elevation. I like to have an elevation layer, and those of you that have worked with me understand how I like to adjust that. So I'm going to make that just a medium, kind of a heavy blue. And let's go ahead and add still maybe, how about a fireplace layer? Now, all of these are not required for the class that I teach, but I found that they really help me in my personal business, so I like to have them around. And flooring, we do a lot with flooring. Now, I like to keep my flooring pretty light. Generally, I like to just be able to see the pattern. So I'm going to go back to a red, which is a very thin line in my world. And let's do another one here. How about furniture? Do a lot with furniture in our CAD work. And let's see, I'll rename this furniture. Now, I like my furniture to stick out, kind of a medium type layer again. I'm just going to pick magenta. I like magenta, and it's a good middle line. So that's definitely one I'd like to use. We are going to get into, more towards the end of the semester, something that we call hatch. So I'm going to go ahead and create a hatch layer now. Later on, we're probably going to enlarge the hatch layer, so giving you multiple hatch layer choices. But for now, let's just go with red. And then let's go ahead and add another one. On this one, I'm thinking possibly mechanical might be a good one to have. And again, I like to keep it kind of middle of the road. So I'm going to just go ahead and put it on my cyan. And let's say I wanted another one. I'm thinking something a little bit smaller. Let's see what this one would do. How about, oh yeah, how about plumbing? Seems like we always have a lot of plumbing to put in. I definitely like my plumbing on a cyan. I think that has to do with just me thinking about water kind of looking bluish overall. So I like that with the plumbing. Usually we'll do one, what I call an RCP layer. Oops, excuse me. Forgot to hit the new one. So RCP, that's reflected ceiling plan. We haven't gotten into that in the class, but always good to have an RCP layer. And for this one, I'm just going to go ahead, excuse me, I don't want to lock that. I'm just going to go with an overall, you know what, I really like it a little lighter. I can change it later. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, this one of our basic 9. I can change it later, but I like it being on something that's a little more screened at this time. And just a few more. Let's go ahead and let's bring in maybe text. Text is always a very good one. We've used that one before when we were setting up previous drawings. For me, text is always a green. That might change depending on who you're actually working for. And I think just a couple more. I'd like to have one, maybe, I've named that one general text. I think I'm going to go ahead and do one text, and I'm going to put it for room names. I like having, oops, excuse me, I lost my train of thought there. Let me go ahead and I'll click on rename. Room names. I like having my room names on a separate line. Remember again, you're going to be the, if you will, librarian of your own drawing. So you can divide this as much as you want, but I like that. I also like to have one other text layer that I'm going to call title block. We haven't created one yet in the class that I'm teaching, but I like it to be a little more bold, and I'm going to go ahead and keep it on my white. And remember, for me, white is my heaviest layer, so really good one to have in that location. And of course, the ever-loving and wonderful viewport layer. I'm just going to name it VP. And remember, what's important for me about a viewport is I don't want to see it on the drawing, but it doesn't really matter what color it is. This is for you. I will tell you though, the yellow on a white background is very hard to see. I like it to have a little bit darker color. Overall, it doesn't matter which one. I'm going to pick the blue, but it doesn't mean that you have to. But the important thing for the VP layer is to make sure that that one is not plotted. So we click on the plot icon to put the little red circle and red line through it. So anything on that line will not be able to be printed. Then let's go ahead. We're just going to add a few more now. I want to do what I call walls, and I'm going to name this one interior, INT. Now, walls interior in general is a fairly heavy line, but not our heaviest, because when we're dealing with AutoCAD, we want to make sure that our heaviest line is the outside. So that'll be our walls exterior. But for this particular pen weight color, our heaviest line, our next heaviest line is going to be our yellow. So our yellow is going to be our walls interior. Then we're going to go ahead and create another one, and this one we'll name walls exterior. And this one will be a heavy line. So instead of the gray 8, I'm going to go ahead and give it that white black. Remember, that's my heaviest line for this particular way of looking at this. And we could have more, but I want to give it one more that I know you're going to use, and that's windows. And windows is very interesting because you can create them several different ways. I'm going to show that in class, how you can go ahead and do those. But this overall now will give me a basic starting point. I realize in the instructions that it didn't have quite this many, and we will talk about it in class. Oh, make sure you don't screw up like I just did here, and make sure that these items are still going to plot. The only one you don't want to plot is the VP. So now I've got some basic layers to be able to manage. I feel pretty good about those. I'm going to go ahead and click out of that. So overall now I still have my layers, but I want to check one other thing, and I know we have discussed this in class, but I want to go in and talk to you one more time about your line types. Remember, your line types also give you a lot of versatility. This one hasn't been set up, so I'm going to click on other very briefly. I'm going to load. Remember, for our class we go beyond the ACADs and we get down into the actual line types themselves. I want to make sure that I have a center. I'm going to also make sure that I load a center 2, and I may just go ahead and load a center a center X2. I like those. I also know I'm going to use quite a few hidden lines in things that I do. So I'm going to go ahead and load the hidden. I'll load the hidden 2. And I'll go ahead and load the hidden X2. Now there is still some other options there, and you can always go back and load anything that you need as you're doing your drawing. Just because we've set this up in a template does not mean that it's not available for you down the road. And so make sure that you understand how to get that. Click OK. So now I've got several different line types. I've got several different possible layers. I can see right here by looking at this that a lot of my layer colors did not come in as I wanted them to. It's okay. I can go back to Format and Layer, and I can look at them here and say, wait a minute, I wanted flooring to be red. And sometimes it'll take a time or two to get this to lay out exactly as you want it. I wanted my furniture to be magenta. So if it doesn't click on the first time, don't think that you did anything wrong. It just means, oh, I'm going to have to go back in and tell the computer one more time, nope, that's not what I meant. I really wanted something else. So feel free to take care of that as you need.